Hello, and thank you for joining today's session, where we'll discuss the theme sustainability, economical, ecological, and social perspectives. We have invited several speakers from all around the world, and we're so proud and excited to have so many people attending to this event today. And my name is Mona Gasmi, and I'm the chairperson of FUF Stockholm Södra, which is newly established association with over 100 members already. So before we begin with this webinar, I will give you a short introduction to who we are. And for the ones who are not familiar with FUF, the Swedish Development Forum, we're an association driven by committed volunteers passionate about raising the global development debate among young people and students. It is also important to note why we decided that this month's theme was to be sustainability. And first and foremost, this is because Earth Day took place on the 22nd of April, but it's also because we believe that long-term sustainable development is the key to build a better world for future generations and to combat climate change. Finally, we're incredibly grateful that our speakers, who are experts in their respective fields, are willing to share their thoughts and experience with us today. So if you're wondering anything or want to be a part of our organization, so please feel free to contact us by email. Now it's time for me to give the word to Clara, and Ida will be moderating this session today. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Clara, and thank you for the introduction, Mona. It is so nice to see that many of you are interested in today's session. As Mona mentioned, I and Ida will be the moderators of today's session. Before we move on for the information about our guests today, we would like to highlight some points for this seminar. This seminar will be recorded and it will be shared on the FUF Play YouTube channel, where you can find the recorded seminars from other times regarding global development questions. If you do not feel comfortable being recorded, please turn your cameras off, and we would like you to be reminded that you should be muted during this session when the guest speakers are speaking. And if you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat and Ida will present them during the question time in the end of this seminar. Also, at that point, you can also use the raise hand function under reactions on Zoom to ask questions. So for the next slide, we would like to mention shortly about our event today, since we have two different sessions, one today and one tomorrow. So today we have this session about deforestation and food production with Maria Osbeck from SIDA and Lynn Rabe from Framtidsjorden. Maria is a senior advisor on environment and climate since almost 4 years back. More specifically, Maria has worked in both Sweden, Asia, and Africa within the development sector. She has a lot of experience in governance, research, and sustainability assessment. However, today she will talk about deforestation, and I'll let her talk more about that. Secondly, we have Lynn from Framtidsjorden, which is called the Future Earth in English. Lynn is very well educated and has a PhD in nature conservation from Södertörn. Lynn works within education and communication on the Framtidsjorden, and she is both an educational officer and a head of the internship program. Today, Lynn will talk about the global rights perspective with a focus on food production, and she will discuss this after Maria's presentation. So lastly, I want to remind you all about our session tomorrow. We have a session between 2 and 3 in the afternoon with Dr. Richard Monang from the UN Environmental Program. He will talk about how to create a career path within sustainability field, and we'll be using the same Zoom link that we've been using today for this session, and therefore we will very much make you feel welcome to attend that second session tomorrow as well. So now that's done, and I think we're ready to start the presentations for our speakers of today's event. I want to emphasize how thankful we are for you, Maria and Lynn, to agree to be part of this event. And now I'm glad to give the word to Maria from SIDA. You're welcome to share your screen if you need to, otherwise feel free to start.
Thank you. So I understand I will begin with the presentation.
Yes, please.
Very good. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, thank you. And thank you very much for the invitation to come and share some of mission. I'm so glad that the students joining this event, and I hope that we will have a fruitful and constructive discussion afterwards. Now we'll see if I can share my presentation. So, can you see?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. So, as Clara said, my name is Maria Osbeck, and I work at SIDA's Department for Europe and Latin America on environment and climate. And I was previously working at the Stockholm Environment Institute and IUCN, the World Conservation Union, before joining SIDA. So I have been on both sides of the development spectrum. So I'm very glad that FUF chose the topic on sustainability, economical and ecological and social perspectives as a topic for this seminar. And as Clara mentioned, my presentation will focus on deforestation, food production, and of course poverty, because poverty is the core of what we do at SIDA. So I will start off my presentation by making a reference on deforestation and poverty reduction. And some of you as a food and agricultural organization, and it comes as not an ending, but you know, the UN has been focusing on the decade of biodiversity. So for 10 years, biodiversity has been a priority area for the UN. And as you have noticed, there have been a lot of international reports on environment, climate, and biodiversity in particular. And the recent report that came, I think, 2020, it shows that deforestation in the recent years has continued, but there has been a decline in how fast the deforestation is going. And the report also highlights that 122 countries and more than 80 countries have already set their target. So these are some indication that there are ongoing efforts among deforestation we see at a global level. But then it received a new report from the Human Development Index, that is from its initial focus on poverty by measuring income to also capturing some of the more multidimensional aspects of poverty. And this is something that we are very much a multi-dimensional issue. And we see that the latest HDI report indicates that there has been national poverty. I think they exemplified that across the 107 developing countries,
I'm sorry to interrupt, Maria, but there's a bit of a lag in the sound.
A reduction.
Maria, maybe you should change your network to your mobile internet or anything else.
I've turned my camera off. Can you hear me now?
There's still an issue with the sound. I don't know if you have any other Wi-Fi possibilities.
No, this is only Wi-Fi that I have. But I'll try. And then, can you hear me now?
Yeah, at the moment it's good.
Okay, good.
So please continue.
Okay, so we have now seen. Thank you. So we've seen some of the insights from the state of the world's forests and also from the HDI, indicating improvements in both poverty reduction and reduction in the pace of deforestation. So does that mean that we are on the right path now? Well, not really. We have also received new reports on the impact of the COVID-19, where the UN expects that more than 150 million people will are in the risk of entering into extreme poverty. And we also know that smallholders are a very big group of people living in extreme poverty. So I would like to say before I continue that the core message of this presentation is that addressing deforestation and finding sustainable solutions to mitigate further deforestation has to put the poor people's perspective at the center. And I will give you some examples why. This is what we at SIDA work with. It's called the multidimensional poverty
Maria, I'm sorry, but I think we lost you.
What are the appropriate solutions? Okay, it's really unfortunate.
Maria, maybe you should be closer to your router. I think we lost her. We're so sorry for the inconvenience.
Should we do that? We'll let Maria figure out if there's a solution, and then we'll take Lynn at this point, and we'll see how we can help Maria make her internet connection better meanwhile. Is that okay with you, Lynn?
Sure, that's okay with me. It's unfortunate. I was very eager to hear her introduction to what I had to say as well. But here we go. Or Maria's back.
See if she's...
Yes, Maria's back.
Yes, I'm back again. I was thrown out of the meeting. Shall I continue with the presentation?
Maybe you should do it without the presentation. Maybe that's the reason why the internet connection is so bad. Or it could be one of the possibilities of that reason. So Maria, if you stop sharing your screen.
Yeah.
Maybe Maria can send the PowerPoint to Mona or to someone else, and they can share it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we can take Lynn at that point where we can fixing the technical stuff. Sorry for the inconvenience, and we can listen and then we can continue with Maria later if it's okay for you, Lynn.
Sure.
Perfect.
Hi.
Yes, Maria, should you please send the PowerPoint to me, so can we fix it?
Okay. Hi, my name is Lynn and I work for Framtidshjorden. Framtidshjorden is an international network of local civil society organizations in Latin America, South Asia and Sweden. We strive for environmental justice and sustainable development through 3 key principles: ecology, cooperation and self-reliance. Our idea is that if you incorporate those 3 ideas in all planning and implementation, we will see a more sustainable, just and inclusive future. Also, the risk of unintentionally doing harm to nature and people would be less. I think Maria would have given a couple of examples where things are not really going as according to plan, because we have seen throughout history that also good intentions to do so-called development work has caused harm and negative effects to planet and social local societies. Unfortunately, we have many such examples within international cooperation and aid too. So Framtidshjorden is critical to the power structure within development cooperation, since it creates a distance between center and periphery, which causes detachments between cause and effect, those who decide and those who are affected. Basically, we're critical that still, even though a lot of things are improving, international aid is not including marginalized people in decision making. And we, as a world, need to alter these power structures in order to reduce the destructive, in order not to reproduce the destructive norms that forced us into this shitstorm in the first place. And Framtidshjorden, we are in our own structure doing this by decentralizing decision-making when it comes to planning, management, and evaluation as much as possible. And we who work in Sweden, our role is to enable and support processes as we are the ones with the economic resources for the moment. And Framtidshjorden gets money from SIDA through Forum SID. And our role is to act as a megaphone for the local struggle in Latin America and Asia, since there are a lot of similarities and we see this on the global level. So with that introduction, to be honest, I'm quite nervous for speaking today, because I very rarely speak as an expert on behalf of Framtidshjorden. I'm not the one who is an expert within our work. The local agents of change are the experts, and usually they are the ones that speak on behalf of us. But today, of different reasons, you got me, and I will talk about sustainable agriculture. Framtidshjorden consists mainly of rural development organizations that work with climate change adaptation, food sovereignty, environmental education, biodiversity, tenure rights, common rights for indigenous groups, well, a bunch of things that together build up to secure sustainable and just development, not only in the global south, but in Sweden too. We have framed our struggle around different issues during the 30+ years that we have been operating as a network, but the essence has always been to get the food production and consumption right, and then other things will follow. For example, if we take the Sustainable Development Goals, we see a strong connection between all of them and food production, or that they have effects on the food production. sorry, now something happened there as well. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes, that's good.
Yes, we will see you and hear you.
Ah, perfect. Because something happened here. Just a second, I'm very sorry.
It is all good.
I'm very sorry, something weird going on today. I know that even though that I think agriculture is a very important issue, it might not be the hottest question within global politics today. It's a very, in Swedish context, it's a very male-dominated, white sector. It's extremely aging. And I'm very happy that so many of you are here today, which doesn't qualify into that kind of category. Sustainable agriculture has been reduced, I would say, to a trade issue. Even though it's linked to so many more things, it's been reduced to a trade issue, and within the Swedish Parliament, it's basically discussed as an export issue. I talked with an MP just this Monday that she is avoiding the question as much as possible because it is such a stiff and institutionalized area of politics. And I don't think she's alone in this. I mean, we often refer to the EU, but even though since due to Brexit, much more of the agricultural politics has been decentralized and are back in Sweden, but still the Swedish politicians don't really want to touch upon it, and they are hardly dealing with the questions. My message today is that agriculture should be central for all discussions about sustainable development because it is of essence for our societies. Sustainable agriculture is key for the future of humanity. Agriculture is the base of our societies, and it can lead it can lead the way either to just climate transition, or if we continue in the way that we are doing right now, it will push us further into climate collapse. IPCC reports that climate change already has severe effects on food production. We can see a warming causing heat waves, droughts, shift of climate zones even, and changing rainfall patterns and greater frequency of extreme events, which, when we're talking about agriculture, have very big consequences for crop yield, for animal growth. The animals are getting smaller due to climate change. It's also have a great effect on pest and disease controls, especially in dry areas, such as where Future Earth is working. Current conventional agriculture is very input intensive when it comes to water, land, chemicals, and it is based on fossil fuel. To enter the future, our agriculture system must go from fossil-based to circular and renewable. However, current agriculture policies, such as the European CAP, are rather accelerating resource degradation Current agriculture policies are formed to serve multinational interest and investments. Basically, the policies are in many ways formed to conserve power on a few. Today, global agriculture business is completely dominated by 4 international actors: Bayer Monsanto, DowDuPont Corvea, Chem China Syngenta, and BASF. And they lump together now and then. But this handful of transnational corporations are the major force to shape the global intertwined system of people and planets. Swedish researcher Carl Folke et al. Even state that those transnational corporations possess the ability to critically influence functions of the biosphere. And the transnational corporations that are dealing with nature resources basically own the climate. We, Framtidsjordens members, we really see and struggle with the effects of this power centralization when it comes to agriculture. Our member organizations are struggling with the effects of this deeply unjust food system. The system is, as I said in the short video introduction too, it's not built to feed the world. It's constructed to make profit for agrobis. Large-scale monoculture producing for export leave local communities with depleted nature resources, loss of cultural and biological diversity, gender inequality, conflicts of land tenure, debts, unjust working condition, and unsustainable migration patterns. Not only in the global south, but in Sweden too. We see similar patterns here as well. And Framtidsjorden wants the opposite. We want the opposite of what I just explained. We want a democratic food system where producers are in control, so they can produce healthy and culturally appropriate food suitable for local ecosystems. We see the important link between food sovereignty, not only food security, which we often talk about in the UN system, but sovereignty and climate justice. And for Framtidsjorden, for Future Earth, on the local level, we see that agroecology as an agrarian technique mobilize farmers and give effects in the entire community, not the least when it comes to equality issues. And to support this form of development, agriculture policies should aim to ensure that gain and yield are people-centric, and that practices are in balance with the surrounded ecosystem. That is not the case today. The politics should promote and fund initiatives that lead to long-term sustainable practices, such as agroecological methods. Today, investments are rather the opposite, and we can see that again and again in the CAP. Agriculture governance must be a planetary matter and not based on the best revenue of money. After all, food is a human right and shouldn't be commercialized as any other article of international trade, even though it still needs to be profitable for farmers. We must engage and give light to the non-economic values of agriculture, such as that agriculture is ensuring resilience for communities and supporting ecosystem services. And it's also essential in the role of cultural identity. And we have seen cases of that in Sweden, but it's cases of that all over the world. A democratization of the agrarian business and food system is key to reduce the polarization that we also see in our society, particularly when it comes to equality between center and periphery, and also among different users groups. And I will give some example why this is important in Sweden too. I think most of you know that in India, almost all land is owned by men, and that it's very hard, if even possible, for women and immigrants to start an agrarian business. It is the same in Sweden. The Swedish Board of Agriculture launched a report last year called Skörda lika, and they strongly conclude that the Swedish agriculture sector is such a male-dominated sector and has such a strong norm, masculinity norm, that it's very hard for women and immigrants, if even possible, to succeed with this within this field. And it's clearly shown in what kind of that the investments are directed toward men-coded techniques and methods. Another example is that I think most of you know about the very tragic trend that farmers in India in large number commit suicide due to economic debts. But I think it's less common that we have a similar trend in Europe. This trend is driven by that European farmers, small-scale farmers not the least, have similar economic pressures as we know that Indian farmers have. And also that the social support and the local communities are very successfully deconstructed within Europe, and particularly in Sweden. Our rural area is kind of dying, and it's linked to the politics that have been for over 20 years driven in relationship to rural development. Our partners see that when they are offering alternatives to the current export-oriented food system and the way to produce food, that people are not only engaged in the techniques, but they are engaged in the new possibilities to reconnect with community and to have new relationships with their fellow farmers, but also with consumers, and that the links between rural and center is getting close, is reconnected. And I want to show a video. Mona, can you help me with this? And this is one example from India, where small-scale farmers have a technique or a new method of participatory labeling, a participatory guarantee system to avoid third-hand labeling due to economic reasons, but also in order to link and to get a better connection between producers and with consumers.
Is it working?
I am Suresh Khanna, working with Kudumbam, an organization based in Trichy, Tamil Nadu, and we are partners of Future Earth Network. So today I come here for a training on PGS. PGS means Participatory Guarantee System. Actually, this training is part of the common activities of Future Earth Network. This meeting is exclusively organized for syrup farmers.
Syrup is working with farmers. We are concentrated in organic agriculture. Now they are cultivating minor millets. They have a small farms, 5 acres, 4 acres, 2 acres, even though they are cultivating minor millets and other food crops, vegetables also. So we want to sell their products better price. Because of that, we organize the group to get the certificate.
So this PGS is a method of certification for organic products. It is a method, simple method, which is exclusively for small farmers. So there are certification methods for big farmers. They can bear the cost of certification. But the small farmers, their land size is very small, their cultivation area is very small, and their income from the crop is also small. So this is an alternative certification system, not only in reducing the cost of cultivation, but also enhance the farmers' capacity to collectively learn, collectively share their knowledge in agriculture, and they also build trust and confidence among farmers on what they are doing. So this, in this method, farmers themselves certify their products. What they have to do is simply they have to organize a farmers group, minimum 5 members, maximum 20 members within their locality. And we have some standards for organics. So these standards, based on the standards, each member of the farmers group, a farm will be appraised by other 2 members. And we have a set of questionnaires. Then the appraisal members ask that kind of questions to the farmers, and they responded. All the farm appraisal will be consolidated and send it to PGS Organic Council. PGS Organic Council will take a decision on the certification matters. So this is all about the PGS training.
I hope it will help to the farmers as well as surrounding people also.
Thank you. The GPS system is very popular in South Asia and Latin America. It's coming some similar examples in Europe. We have other, not this particular system, but other systems within Sweden too. And another example of a Swedish example to reconnect producer and consumer is Rekoringar. But yet Sweden has quite a lot to learn from the global south when it comes to sustainable food practices and rebuilding the local market and also healthy communities. We really needed to start talking about food sovereignty in Sweden. A tiny silver lining with the pandemic is that it has put some fire under the debate about civil preparedness and the issue of self-sufficiency. Framtidshjorden have a petition and some articles about this. You can check it out on our web page or Framtidshjorden on Instagram for more information. But they basically say that Swedish self-sufficiency is terrible. It has dropped from 90% to not even 50% in a couple of main crops just within 20 years. And if we are not producing our food, who is, and to what cost? Framtidshjorden has recently launched a consumer guide to support acting for local food sovereignty. You can order it on our webpage, www.framtidsjorden.se. And at the same time as we try to support the consumer within this process, we're very clear that this is a systematic failure, and it's not expected. It couldn't be solved with individual acts, and therefore we need to mobilize for system change. And the civil society is very important as a protector of democracy. In all aspects, because the democracy is really under threat right now, but also when it comes to the food system. We see riots in India. Why don't we see similar protests when Sweden are implementing the same kind of politics? To support mobilization and strengthen civil society, and also to enable this exchange between North and the South, Framtidsjorden has an internship program, and I see a number of people in the audience that have undergone this internship program. The program is for Swedish young professionals like yourself to get practical experience by doing an internship with our members for 4 to 6 months. And I will end with a career advice, since you have that for next session, and that is to do the internship with us as soon as the global situation allows. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very good. Especially I found the connection between the masculinity and agriculture very interesting, and I've never thought about that before. Hopefully we have Maria with us now, and that it should all be working. Can we see if we can get that out?
Okay, so let's hope it will work better this time. I see Mona has the presentation. Maybe you can put it on the slide 3. And I will just summarize briefly what I said on the first slides, where I presented about the new state of the forest report that concludes that deforestation remains an issue, but we have seen a decrease in the rate of how fast is continuing. And similarly with poverty reduction, we see from the Human Development Index that poverty is decreasing over time, and you have all probably seen the presentations by Hans Rosling, and this is a phenomena that we see globally. But then at the same time, poverty remains a key issue for still 1.3 billion people in the world. So even if we have seen a decrease, it's still a major concern. And as was highlighted in the recent reports from the UN, the ongoing pandemic is expected to threaten another 100 million people from becoming extremely poor. So of course, this is an issue that we at SIDA look very carefully at, and try and adjust the overseas development assistance to also meet the new changes and challenges in the world. So I think where I was last thrown out because of the poor internet connection, I put on the slide of the multidimensional poverty tool that we at SIDA work. And I wanted to begin with that because at SIDA, we see poverty as a multidimensional that describes poverty in terms of lack of resources, power and voice, opportunities and choice, and human security. And I think in the presentation by Lynn, there was a lot of examples that illustrate these dimensions. And for SIDA, it's important to have this broad understanding of poverty in order to understand what are the drivers behind poverty. What is it that puts certain people into poverty, and what are then the appropriate actions to support poverty reduction in different contexts. And having this broader understanding is from SIDA essential, because in terms of understanding poverty, there are very rarely causal relations. It is a multidimensional issue that also needs to be addressed from a multidimensional perspective. And if we go to the next slide, because you probably wonder, so what does this have to do with deforestation? And the purpose of my presentation is trying to make the link between deforestation and poverty reduction, and also how we work with deforestation. How can we do that in a way that it also serves to reduce poverty? And in the report that I mentioned earlier, the state of the forest, we can see that forests provide more than 86 million green jobs and support the livelihood of many more. And an estimated 880 million people spend part of their time collecting fuel wood and producing charcoal. And 90% of people living in extreme poverty are dependent on forests for at least part of their livelihoods. So this, we can go to the next slide, shows that addressing poverty, addressing deforestation, we cannot perhaps focus only on excluding people from having access to forests. If we put poor people's perspective at the center, working with deforestation requires a broader set of actions to be successful. And I think Lynn mentioned the global system of consumer producer responsibilities. And this is another way of looking at that, where we have actually evidence that demonstrates the link between deforestation and international trade. And this is, of course, important if we saw earlier that 90% of people living in extreme poverty rely on forests. If the consumer and global trade is a key driver for deforestation, we also have to address the global trade system and financial system in order to ensure that people who rely on forests for their own livelihood also are able to do so. And the table you see here on the left is from the Stockholm Environment Institute, who have developed a model where they can measure how products that we use in Europe are directly linked, in this case, to Brazil and deforestation in Brazil. And we see here that I think in 2017, the EU was responsible for 16% of tropical deforestation associated with international trade. And between 2005 and 17, soy and palm oil and beef were the commodities with the largest embedded tropical deforestation imported into the EU, followed by wood products, cocoa, and coffee. And during this period, the largest EU economies, Germany, Italy, Spain, the UK, the Netherlands, France, Belgium, and Poland, were responsible for 80% of the EU's embedded deforestation through the use of forest risk commodities. So this is not to say that SIDA does not support sustainable trade, but we really emphasize on the need to put in place sustainability, also linked with the global trade system. And how we can do so by also understanding where deforestation is taking part. This is very helpful in terms of then being able to identify in which locations do these people live, in which locations do we see a high biodiversity value, for instance, then we can use a trade market to make sure that commodities imported to Europe should not be produced in those biodiversity hotspots, for instance, or in areas where people rely on the forest for their own livelihood. So this is a way of concretely showing what it means in practice to work with sustainability, producer and consumer responsibility. And then I also added the slide because I think it's important. It's from the World Resource Institute in terms of, we saw earlier that there is a reduction in the rate of deforestation, but we also know that tropical deforestation has continued. So this is also important to understand deforestation because, as you know, you can always put a figure in something and try and explain a situation. So we see globally there is a decrease in deforestation, but we also see that in terms of tropical tree cover, there has been an increase. And tropical tree cover is, of course, very important when it comes to climate change. And WRI, they're exemplifying this by showing that if the tropical tree cover, if rainforest would be a country, it would be the third largest emitter of carbon dioxide. So it's a way, again, of understanding the complexities around how we explain deforestation, how we explain poverty reductions, and the different interlinkages. So next slide, please. Thank you. So then, since there has been a lot of attention now, both with ODI and also with the multilaterals on deforestation and the role of biodiversity, there's also been a couple of new reports that I think are very important, that really illustrates the link between the role of indigenous people and how to protect forest and biodiversity. And to the left, you see a report from FAO, and to the right is from the IPBES, who that report from IPBES was released last year, that really put biodiversity on the agenda at the international level. But what's important here is that in both reports, they have reviewed, I think, 300 scientific articles and concluded that in areas managed by indigenous people, the rate of deforestation and the protection of biodiversity is much higher. And this is something that has been disputed before, because one often looks at the role of local people and how they are also part of the destruction of the environment. These reports shows the scientific evidence that supports the fact that indigenous people globally protect forests and biodiversity in a better way than others. So it's if you want to learn more about these topics, I encourage you to have a look at these reports. And I think that the report from FAO shows that the best results seen in indigenous territories that have recognized collective legal titles to the land between 2000 and 2012, deforestation rates in these territories in Bolivia, Brazil, and the Colombian Amazon were only 1/2 to 1/3 of those in other forests with similar ecological characteristics. And this is also an example of showing how securing land tenure, land rights is very important also in the work with deforestation. And this, as those of you who have been working on these topics know, that it's often something that takes decades to solve. So focusing solidly on land rights is not sufficient. One also has to work with other measures to reduce poverty. But land tenure is essential in combating both deforestation and securing biodiversity. So if you move to the next slide. Thank you. This is an illustration that explains the annual income spent on food. And I added this figure because I think this is also a way of understanding the multidimensional factors linked to poverty. And as you see in a lot of the poorer countries, people spend more of their income on food. So this is also to make sure that there is a market. And I think the example that we saw in the film from India is one way of working with that, by organizing local people and through the certification also establish market systems that can ensure that there is a benefit coming back to the communities. But it also shows that people spend a lot of money on food. And the question in the future is it realistic that we see for the US to only spend 6% of your income on food? If we want to move towards sustainable development and green transition, I think that is not a realistic figure. Next slide, please. So I will end with this by saying that we really need to understand the drivers behind poverty. And as we have seen, and as also been highlighted in many of the new international reports, including also this report from Dasgupta, the food production sector, the agriculture sector, is the most significant driver of terrestrial biodiversity loss and biodiversity. But then again, this is also a very aggregated way of understanding the links and our total impact on nature. And we know that producing food is not a homogeneous system. There are many different types of food production systems, and it's therefore difficult to talk about the agriculture sector as one sector. We know that the way we use the resources today, it requires 1.6 Earths to maintain the current living standards. And that's one of the findings in the Dasgupta report, that also calls for a new way of thinking and how to protect nature, how to encourage nature-based solutions to be part of the transition from fossil fuel to renewable in the broader green transition, and encouragement of moving towards the goals in the Agenda 2030. So I will end this presentation with a quote from Saripata Dasgupta, where he says that the solution starts with understanding and accepting a simple truth, and that is that our economies are embedded within nature and not external to it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was very interesting hearing your knowledge and experience. I think now there's time for a bit of a break. I think we can do to 1:05 and then come back for questions and discussion time. So if you have any questions, you can send them in the chat or to Ida, and we will bring them up if you do not want to speak yourself, because then you can just raise your hand in the reaction on Zoom. Okay? Great. Okay, I'll see you 5 past. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Ida, and I will be moderating this discussion part of today's event. We now have around 25 minutes for discussion and questions and answers. You can continue to write your questions either in the chat, or you can also use the raise hand function, and then I will give the floor to you directly. I see that we already have a few questions in the chat, so let me just read the first one from Julia. So the question reads as follows: do you see voluntary private standards or national regulations as solutions? Or maybe should the focus be rather on changing the trade rules of the WTO? Not sure which one of you wants to start, but perhaps I will give the word to you, Lynn.
I would love a change of trade rules in the WTO. It's a huge and very complicated issue to succeed with. But if you would like to knock yourselves out, I think there is plenty to do within that sphere. I think that food needed to be reframed a little bit, not only to be a trade issue, but an environment issue, a climate change issue. We need to talk about food and nature production in more ways than just a trade issue. I think that is a more I think that's the way to tackle the question and to find platforms to tackle the questions, to find an interest, and because WTO and the trade system is very difficult to alter. There's a lot of problems with it, huge problems with it that has a severe effect on local level. But as an advocacy organization, we at Student don't see how we can deal with this, but it's required definitely.
Great, thank you so much, Lynn. Do you have something you would like to add to that, Maria?
Yeah, no, I think Lynn described it very well. What I would like to add is the role of subsidies. It's expected that about $46 trillion is now subsidizing activities that have a negative impact on nature. And I think there is a big responsibility of the public sector to make sure that the institutional arrangements needed to support this transition are put in place. In many ways, the private sector or parts of the private sector have been supportive of a transition and putting in place sustainability measures in different ways, but that also has to be matched with what governments do in terms of the institutional setup. So everyone has a responsibility, but I wouldn't limit it only to the private sector.
Great, thank you so much for that answer. It really seems that we need to involve a lot of different actors and have this holistic approach that you both already discussed during your presentations. So we have a question in the chat to Maria, a very, how would I say, challenging question, I would say. So what do you think is the best way to combat climate change?
Yeah, well, if I can use my last quote from Dasgupta, I think it really comes down to what is our worldview in terms of a sustainable society. And if we can embed nature within and not view nature as external to our broader society and economy, I think that will have great impact on how we can support this transition. But I think in terms of what was the question on how to transit?
The best way to combat climate change.
Yeah, so over and above the worldview, the broader transition from fossil fuel to renewable at a larger societal level is needed, and that requires actions at all levels of societies, from the individual to the broader society at large. And I think we should focus solidly on technical solutions. Technical solutions is something that is required, but it's not the end solution. We need really to build a momentum and create the will of societies to make this transition, and that's not limited only to technical solutions.
Thank you so much. That was a very enlightening answer. Then we have a question to you, Lynn, and the question reads as follows. How could we include women more in the agricultural sector? So this has to do with the observation that you brought up in relation to the male-dominated field. So what is your view on this?
First and foremost, it's a question of acknowledging, because there's plenty of women within the agriculture sector, especially globally. Most small-scale farmers in the world are female, but they are not acknowledged and recognized as farmers. I mean, one of my I'm also writing a children's book now, because you can see, like in Swedish children's literature, it's always the farmer and the farmer's wife. That's how we talk about farmers. We see a male figure, and then there is someone else also married to him that is not recognized as a farmer. And this is a global pattern. So there is plenty of women in the agriculture sector doing very, very important work when it comes to sustainable agriculture, often having solution to climate adaptations. If I take Tamil Nadu, India as an example, forest gardens and kitchen gardens and multi-cropping, it's female-coded techniques that have been looked down upon since the Green Revolution, because it's not neat and it doesn't give economic, it's not involved in the male agriculture economic system. By recognizing those techniques and acknowledging the women that possess this knowledge, they get a better role within and are acknowledged as farmers within the agriculture sector. That's globally, to see the ones actually doing the work, which in large extent are women. In Sweden, it's also an acknowledgement and another view on what is food production. Many of those rekoringsprodukter are female producers, small scale, but they are not seen and recognized and therefore not invited into decision making when it comes to agrarian questions. So that's the larger problem also, that if you're not recognized, you're not invited, you cannot be included, and you cannot influence decisions that are very much affecting you. So the problem is not getting more women in as much as seeing the ones that are there, I would say. And in Sweden, we could do that by prioritizing what kind of production we give substitutes to, as Maria was talking about before, and also by prioritizing land. It's very hard to buy productive land in Sweden, but if on communal level, this is communal decision, if you prioritize in detaljplanen that fertile agrarian land are primarily going to growing, and then it would be much easier to get access of land if you don't have to compete with a mall or a road or a summer house in order to buy productive land.
Yes, thank you so much, Lynn. That was very interesting to hear your thoughts. I see that there is a hand raised by Sule, so feel free to take the floor and ask your question.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I was wondering one question, and I want to ask to Maria, if it's okay. But I think, I'm not sure if she is there.
Yes, she's there.
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, perfect, because she was frozen, sorry. Yeah, I was wondering about these transition risks when we are talking about moving towards renewable energy. Because right now I feel like we are reading all the time that developing countries are crucial right now regarding climate change, because if they are following the same path as the developed countries and emit as much as they did, it's kind of like there is no room for that if you want to kind of reach the targets and have less effects. And I was wondering if there is any project or work that SIDA is working with these type of transition risks regarding developing countries, especially Latin America or Asia.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's a very good question. And it's also a question that the international donor community is very much engaged in. And from Sweden, we have, in accordance with the Swedish climate law, that also stipulates that the overseas development assistance should not contribute to fossil fuel activities, made a commitment that the ODA should not be used for any type of fossil fuel activities. And by doing so, we are working with the transition. And I think there are different ways of doing this. It's of course creating the political will in our partner countries, but then also finding the sustainable solutions. And this is, we are really at the crossroad in societies and in the world now, because we also know that continuing business as usual will be very costly for poorer countries, since the future is not in oil, the future is in renewable. So it's not only, it's also about enabling this transition to take part of both the new technologies, but then also, as I said before, being able to support society and also to support institutions to continue these pathways. And we work with this in many different ways. Both we work in the energy sector, we work also with agriculture, but we also work with the Paris Agreement and supporting countries and becoming Paris aligned. And being Paris aligned is a requirement from SIDA now with many of our partners. So we also support our partners to demonstrate how they are Paris aligned and how that's featured in the project. So yes, we have many different types of projects, and we're also assessing from a broader point of view how we prepare ourselves in terms of making this in a more systematic way. And we are not there yet. So it's more on a project level.
Thank you so much for the answer.
Lynn, did you want to add something? I saw that you were raising your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I really see the risk, and I know why we are talking about it, or the negative consequences that transition might have. But I think we also should focus on the possibilities with the just climate transition. Union to Union recently launched a report with international work concluding that we will gain possibly 5 more times of jobs within a transition than we will lose. The agrarian sector is also a very big opportunity when it comes to work and that kind of development. So I just wanted to add on that it's not only things that we are losing when it comes to economic growth, it's a lot that we gain, even though we promote the decoupling from economic growth altogether.
Yes, thank you so much for that addition. Then we have a question in the chat that reads as follows. The eco-agriculture in Sweden is still very large scale, and there is a lot of great ways of agriculture that is more sustainable. Is there any other agriculture that you would like to see more of in Sweden? Agroforestry or maybe community supported agriculture? Lynn, would you like to start?
I agree with the one saying the question, and agroforestry is a very interesting method or bunch of methods. I would generally very much like to see agroecological methods, meaning methods where the agricultural system are built in balance and in discussion with surrounding nature system. I would like more official support, bidrag, to this kind of techniques, particularly within the development sector, agriculture aid, because as we mentioned plenty of times before, due to subsidies and the support system, it's almost impossible for those other kinds of methods of agriculture to gain any kind of momentum or to meet or to compete with the current system. So I like to see a diversity of agriculture system, all of them in relationship to the ecosystem. Needs to be quite a lot of political change for that to happen.
Thank you so much. I don't know, Maria, if you want to add something there, but there is also another question for you in the chat. Since Greta Thunberg era, do you believe their global activism has put more pressure on SIDA's work? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And that is also a very good question. And I think, as I think Lynn also mentioned in her presentation, civil society is an important sector in any modern society. And the Swedish model, where you have a civil society, you have a private sector, you have a public sector, is a model that we also work with as part of the overseas development assistance. So I think Greta Thunberg has contributed with things that we in the environment sector have been trying to do for many years, and she really managed to get the attention. And I think just getting the attention has been very important into also continue the support for this work. And I think, what we have seen now from the high-level meetings is that now environment is not seen as a standalone sector and theme. It's really a part of our development and part of the economy. And I think that represents also the fact that we know that from an economic point of view, it's not going to work to continue with a fossil fuel-based system. So, of course, there are incentives also from a business point of view using the current model to continue supporting this. But I think she's been extremely important in getting the attention needed to get the ball rolling. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. I see that we are almost running out of time. So before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask both of you if you have any final thoughts or comments or, I don't know, advice that you would like to share with us before we conclude. Maybe first Maria, and then we give the final word to Lynn.
Yeah, well, thank you. And also thank you to all the participants. And my final remark would be to encourage you to continue studies on international relations, international development, and poverty reduction, and also always keep being critical and be creative, because that's really important in the development sector. But from my personal experience, I've had 20 years of lots of interesting work, and I've enjoyed every day working with a development cooperation, and I very much encourage you to enter this field. Thank you.
Great, that sounds very encouraging. Over to you, Lynn.
I link on. We need to broaden the resource base for development work. We need people that have an intersectional analysis, that understand the multitude of problems. We need new aspects. It's a very white sector globally. We need more representation. And for us that are already managed to get in to the business, we need to open doors and to support newcomers and new perspectives. So please contact me if there is anything I can do in mentoring or advising or opening doors. The best I can. The internship program is one recommendation because in order to tackle those huge issues, we need all the support we can get and a variety of people, methods, and resources. So if you decide that SIDA is not the place for you, then maybe civil society is, or engagement parallel to other kind of jobs.
Great, thank you so much, Lynn and Maria. It was really great to have you here with us today, and I'm sure that everyone enjoyed hearing your thoughts and want to dig up these resources and different reports that you mentioned. Perhaps you want to share the links with us afterwards so that we can share them with the participants. So once again, thank you so much. And just to conclude, as it was mentioned at the beginning, this discussion will also be uploaded on YouTube if you wish to share it with friends or colleagues. And if you enjoyed these kinds of events and would like to learn more about global development issues, you can also become a member of FUF. And you can visit FUF's website to find more information about this. So it's fuf.se. Also, if you would like to help us to help arrange these kinds of events, you can contact our local group, FUF Stockholm Södra. On the slide, you will see our Facebook and Instagram and email. So we're actually looking for new members at the moment. So just reach out if you're interested in joining. You can become an active member even if you don't live in Stockholm, since due to the pandemic, we're doing everything online. So yes, just get in touch. We would love to hear from you and see how you can contribute. Finally, we really hope that you enjoyed this discussion and that we will also see you in tomorrow's session with Richard Munang from the UN Environment Programme. So thank you again to everyone for joining and have a nice afternoon. Bye.